because you know, Hoda, how low energy and lazy I really am. I'm the opposite of you. I'm the opposite of Jenna. Y'all have 16 jobs. You have a podcast. You have a production company, this, that. I'm not. I go home, I take a nap, and then I hang out with my kids.
A decades-long friendship and unwavering loyalty between Hoda Kotb and Savannah Guthrie were pushed to the absolute limit by a new and terrifying mystery. It was not a familiar smile or a heartwarming story that greeted millions of viewers one cold February morning, but a stark and unsettling truth. At 61, after having said farewell to her television career, Hoda Kotb broke her silence. She revealed a situation so shocking it sent tremors through the entire staff of the Today Show. Hoda disclosed the reality behind Savannah's stoic image, showing what was truly happening behind the scenes. What the public saw was merely the surface. What was actually unfolding was a living nightmare. A mother had been kidnapped. A multi-million-dollar ransom had been demanded. And a painful question hung in the air. Could their friendship possibly survive this horrific ordeal? The chain of events that led to Hoda Kotb's unexpected return began 5 months earlier, on a clear morning in September 2024. During the final segment of the broadcast, Hoda turned to the camera and delivered a prepared statement that stunned the show's loyal viewers. After 26 years at NBC, she announced her official departure from the Today Show. Her decision was not born from professional fatigue or internal conflict, but from a profoundly personal and non-negotiable priority. Hoda explained that she needed to dedicate her full time and energy to her family, specifically to provide hands-on care for her daughter, Hope, who was navigating a complex and ongoing series of health challenges. For Hoda, the role of a mother superseded any professional title. She quickly and decisively began a new chapter. Hoda and her daughters moved to a quiet, spacious home in Westchester, New York, a deliberate retreat from the relentless energy of Manhattan. There, she fully embraced her new life. She founded a small production company, Joy 101, a passion project focused on creating uplifting content, which she managed from a home office. Her daily schedule, once dictated by 3 a.m., wake-up calls and producers' briefings, now revolved around school runs, meal preparation, and the simple, grounding routines of a full-time parent. She had found a new kind of peace in her early retirement, a quiet rhythm she intended to maintain for the foreseeable future. That peace was violently shattered on February 1st, 2026. The news arrived not as a gradual concern, but as a sudden, catastrophic blow. Savannah Guthrie was in a pre-show production meeting when she received a call from her brother in Arizona. He informed her that their mother, Nancy Guthrie, had been reported missing from her home in Tucson. Police had been dispatched for a wellness check and found signs of a forced entry. Savannah's reaction was immediate and absolute. She stood up from the meeting table, informed her executive producer of the emergency, and left the building. Within 2 hours, she was on a commercial flight to Tucson to work directly with the local police and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, who were already classifying the case as a potential abduction. The main anchor chair of one of America's most watched morning shows was left abruptly vacant in the midst of an unfolding personal and public crisis. The void was not left empty for long. On the morning of February 9th, 2026, viewers of the Today Show witnessed a return no one had anticipated. Hoda Kotb, dressed not in the casual attire of her new life, but in professional broadcast wear, walked onto the set and sat in her familiar chair. She had put her new life, her company, and the tranquility of Westchester on hold indefinitely. Hoda returned to the main anchor position not because of a contractual clause or a network request, but as an act of profound friendship. Her purpose was twofold and crystal clear. First, to provide stability and continuity for the show and its viewers during a period of intense uncertainty. And second, and far more importantly, to honor a silent promise to Savannah, the promise of a friend who would always be there, no matter the cost. Hoda's return was more than a professional courtesy. It was a deeply personal act, rooted in a history that the public was only just beginning to understand. It was a testament to a bond forged not in the bright lights of the studio, but in the quiet, shadowed moments of private hardship. For years, the phrase, "The Today Show family," had been a recurring theme on the program, a comforting slogan for viewers. In the dark days of February 2026, Hoda Kotb's actions demonstrated that this was not a marketing catchphrase, but a functional reality. She transformed the sentiment into tangible, unwavering support. During her first broadcast back, Hoda directly addressed the reason for her return. Her voice was steady, but her words carried the weight of personal history. She recounted a specific, profound memory from 2023. It was the period when her daughter Hope was admitted to the intensive care unit, a time Hoda described as one of the most frightening of her life. She recalled sitting alone in the sterile, silent waiting room of the hospital, overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty. The first person to walk through the doors, Hoda explained, even before some of her own extended family members could arrive, was Savannah Guthrie. Savannah hadn't called ahead or sent a text message. She simply appeared. She brought coffee, sat beside Hoda, and, for long stretches, said nothing at all, offering a ministry of presence that no words could replicate. When your child is sick, you never, ever forget the people who show up, Hoda stated on air, looking directly at the camera. Savannah showed up for me, so now I am showing up for her. It's as simple as that. Hoda's return was not framed as a sacrifice, but as a reciprocation, a moral and emotional obligation between friends. It was her way of repaying the debt of loyalty to the person who had stood by her in her darkest hour. The support from Hoda and the entire Today crew extended far beyond filling an empty seat. They methodically and deliberately transformed Studio 1A into a visible symbol of solidarity. Hoda and her co-anchors began wearing small, simple yellow ribbons on their lapels each day, a visual tribute to Nancy Guthrie and a constant, silent reminder to the audience to keep her story front and center. The set itself, typically a vibrant mix of colors, was soon filled with arrangements of yellow flowers, tulips, roses, and daffodils, sent by affiliates and viewers from across the country, turning the space into a garden of hope. The most significant demonstration of their commitment, however, was a major logistical and financial decision. The network had invested heavily in the upcoming coverage of the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milan and Cortina d'Ampezzo, Italy. The Today Show was scheduled to broadcast live from Italy for 2 full weeks, an assignment that had been in the planning stages for over a year. In a closed-door meeting with NBC executives, Hoda and the show's executive producer made a formal request. They wanted to cancel the trip. They argued that their place was in New York, providing consistent coverage and, more importantly, being physically present for their colleague when she needed them most. The network agreed. The entire multi-million-dollar Olympic production was scrapped. This unified front, broadcast daily from New York, stood in stark contrast to the grim and lonely reality of the investigation unfolding thousands of miles away in Arizona. To comprehend the true depth of the crisis facing the Guthrie family, it was essential to understand the woman at its center, Nancy Guthrie. At 84 years old, she embodied a generation defined by resilience. While many people her age live in assisted living facilities or with family, Nancy cherished her independence. She lived alone in the same comfortable, single-story house in Tucson, Arizona, that she had shared with her late husband, maintaining her home and her life with meticulous care. Those who knew her best described her with words like iron-willed and tough as nails. Her formidable strength was not an affectation, it was forged in the crucible of tragedy. In 1988, her husband, Charles Guthrie, died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving Nancy a widow with 3 children to raise on her own. She did not crumble. She became the family's unshakable foundation, serving as both mother and father, instilling in her children, Savannah, Charles Jr., and Annie, a powerful sense of discipline, self-reliance, and integrity. This upbringing directly shaped Savannah's professional persona, giving her the grit and composure required to thrive in the high-pressure world of broadcast journalism. Behind this tough exterior, however, were the inescapable vulnerabilities of age. Nancy experienced significant mobility challenges, relying on a cane to move safely around her home. More critically, she had a serious heart condition that required a strict regimen of daily medication. Her doctors had made it clear that missing even a single day's dose could trigger a potentially fatal cardiac event. This medical fact added a terrifying ticking clock to the investigation, transforming the search from urgent to critically time-sensitive. The sequence of her disappearance began on the evening of January 31st, 2026. It was a Tuesday. Her last known contact was a phone call with a close friend at approximately 8:30 p.m. The friend later told police that Nancy sounded cheerful and was discussing her plans to do some gardening the next day. There was no hint of alarm or distress. The following morning, a neighbor who often checked in on Nancy noticed that her back gate was ajar. Peeking inside, she saw that the rear door to the house was also open. She called the police. When officers entered the home, they found Nancy's purse, keys, and mobile phone on the kitchen counter. A ceramic lamp in the living room was knocked over and broken, and a rug was askew, indicating a possible struggle. Nancy Guthrie was gone. The disappearance of this fiercely independent but medically fragile matriarch set in motion a high-stakes criminal investigation that would capture the nation's attention. The investigation escalated with chilling speed. What began as a missing person case officially became a federal kidnapping investigation on February 3rd, 2026. An email, sent from an encrypted address, arrived in the inboxes of the entertainment news outlet TMZ and 2 local Arizona television stations. The message was brief, devoid of emotion, and terrifyingly clear. The authors of the email claimed to have Nancy Guthrie. They demanded a ransom of $4 million, specifying that the payment must be made in Bitcoin to a designated digital wallet address to ensure anonymity. The email concluded with a stark warning: do not contact FBI. Wait for instructions. When the initial deadline passed without a public response, a second email arrived, increasing the demand to $6 million. What gave the threat immediate credibility in the eyes of the FBI were the specific details included in the message. The kidnappers described the exact clothing Nancy was wearing on the night she was taken, a blue nightgown with a white floral pattern, information that law enforcement had deliberately withheld from the public. They also mentioned the broken ceramic lamp, a detail known only to investigators and the perpetrators, despite the authenticity of the threat. A critical and deeply disturbing element was missing: the family, through a back channel established by the FBI, repeatedly requested proof of life. They asked for a photo of Nancy holding a current newspaper, a short video, or a simple recorded message. The kidnappers refused. Their silence on this point created an agonizing void for the family, fueling their worst fears. Facing this terrifying impasse, the Guthrie family, on the advice of FBI negotiators, decided to take a significant public step. On February 7, 2026, Savannah, flanked by her brother Charles and sister Annie, appeared in a short, self-recorded video statement. Savannah's face was etched with exhaustion, but her voice was steady and resolute. She looked directly into the camera's lens and delivered a message intended for an audience of one, or a small group. "To the people who have our mother," she began, "we have received your message. We have the money. We will not involve the police in the exchange. We will pay. Please, just tell us how to do it safely and show us she is alive." It was a high-stakes gambit, a desperate maneuver designed to open a direct line of communication and demonstrate the family's willingness to comply. Simultaneously, the FBI's evidence response team was conducting a painstaking forensic examination of Nancy's home. The signs of a struggle were evident. Beyond the broken lamp, there were scuff marks on the floor and a displaced armchair. The most significant discovery came from the stone patio outside the back door. Using a chemical agent, investigators located a few small, almost invisible drops of blood. The sample was rushed to the FBI's lab in Quantico, Virginia. The results confirmed two things. The blood did not belong to Nancy Guthrie, and it was not in CODIS, the National Criminal DNA Database. It was the first physical evidence of an unknown perpetrator. A breakthrough came from a neighbor's security camera, positioned high on a corner of their roof. The footage, captured at 11:17 p.m. on the night of the abduction, showed a single figure, approximately 5 feet 10 inches tall, dressed in dark clothing, a full-face mask, and carrying a large backpack, moving swiftly and silently through the backyard. Days later, a city sanitation worker, emptying a public trash can 3 blocks from Nancy's home, found a single black leather glove. It was sent for analysis. The lab returned with a definitive match. The DNA from skin cells inside the glove was identical to the DNA from the blood found at the scene. The Bureau's Cybercrime Division focused on the digital trail. They monitored the Bitcoin wallet, which remained inactive. They traced the IP address of the first ransom email to a public Wi-Fi network at a large truck stop off Interstate 10, just outside Phoenix. However, the sender had used a sophisticated combination of a VPN and the Tor network, making it impossible to identify the specific device or user. The evidence collectively painted a chilling picture. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit concluded this was not a random crime of opportunity. It was a well-researched, targeted attack, planned and executed by a small, disciplined group focused exclusively on a financial payout from a high-profile family. While the FBI managed the covert investigation, Hoda Kotb commanded the public-facing campaign. She instinctively understood that sustained national media attention was a powerful tool. It could exert immense pressure on the kidnappers, making it harder for them to move or hold their victim. And it could serve as a constant source of moral support for the Guthrie family. Her most visible and effective initiative was the yellow ribbon. It began simply on her second day back on the air. Hoda wore a small, folded piece of yellow ribbon pinned to her blazer. She took a moment at the end of the broadcast to explain its significance as a timeless symbol of hope and the desire for a safe return of a loved one. The gesture resonated instantly, within 24 hours. The entire Today Show team was wearing one. The movement then exploded beyond Rockefeller Plaza. Affiliates in local news markets across the country adopted the symbol. Soon, politicians were seen wearing them during press conferences. Professional sports teams wore yellow patches on their uniforms. The yellow ribbon became a national emblem of solidarity, a silent, ubiquitous message to the kidnappers. The entire country is watching. Hoda also leveraged her personal Instagram account, which had millions of followers. With tactical precision, she transformed it from a feed of personal photos into a central hub for the campaign to find Nancy. She did not just post official FBI flyers, she curated a deeply personal portrait of the woman who was missing. She shared a faded photo of Nancy holding a newborn Savannah, with the caption, "This is who we are fighting for." Not a headline, but a mother, a grandmother, a woman who taught her daughter to be strong. Please, keep your eyes open. She posted a short video clip from a family vacation years earlier, showing Nancy laughing. The goal was strategic, to humanize the victim, to ensure she was seen as a person, not a news story, thereby increasing the moral pressure on her captors. Her posts also served a practical purpose. She directly thanked viewers who had called into the FBI tip line, validating their efforts. To the viewer in Tucson who reported seeing a suspicious van near your neighborhood, thank you. One post read, "The FBI has your information. Every single tip matters. You are part of this team." In doing so, Hoda mobilized a nationwide network of civilian observers, effectively turning her social media platform into an unofficial headquarters for the public search effort. As the nation watched Savannah Guthrie deliver composed, nightly updates on the search for her mother, they saw an image of incredible strength. But Hoda Kotb, in her unique position as both public stand-in and private confidant, saw the complex and painful reality behind that facade. She grew increasingly concerned that Savannah was becoming a prisoner of the very resilience her mother had instilled in her. Nancy had taught her children to be stoic, to face adversity head-on without public displays of emotion. That lesson was now both a vital coping mechanism and a crushing burden. Savannah was holding herself together with immense discipline, believing any sign of weakness would hinder the investigation or cause her family further pain. In their private, late-night phone calls, after the news cameras were off and the adrenaline of the day had subsided, Hoda spoke to Savannah not as a co-worker, but as a friend. She gently but persistently urged Savannah to allow herself to be human. "You don't have to be a superhero, Savannah," Hoda would say. "You have the right to fall apart. You have the right to be angry. It's okay not to be okay." Hoda understood that the relentless suppression of grief and fear was unsustainable and could lead to a deeper, more lasting trauma. At 61, Hoda's perspective was shaped by a lifetime of personal and professional challenges. She knew that mental and emotional health was more valuable than any public image of invincibility. She believed that for Savannah to endure the marathon of this crisis, she had to grant herself moments of grace, moments of weakness. As the investigation continued into its third week, the outcome remained terrifyingly uncertain. The case left behind a series of profound, unanswered questions. Was the iron-willed strength Savannah had inherited from her mother the very thing that was enabling her to lead the fight? Or had it become an emotional cage, preventing her from processing her own agony? And amid this relentless storm of fear and uncertainty, was the steadfast, unconditional friendship of Hoda Kotb an anchor in every sense of the word, the only thing preventing Savannah Guthrie from completely collapsing under the unimaginable weight of it all? The answers remained elusive, hidden in the agonizing silence that stretched between each new day and the desperate hope for a breakthrough.